In the early summer of 2025, the world watched as tensions between the United States and Iran erupted into direct military conflict. On June 13, the United States, under the leadership of President Donald Trump, joined its longtime ally Israel in a coordinated aerial assault on several key Iranian sites. The American component of this military action was codenamed Operation Midnight Hammer. The official justification provided by the Trump administration was direct and unambiguous. The strikes were a necessary preemptive measure. The White House stated that the goal was not to initiate a full-scale war or to force a change in Iran's government. Instead, the stated purpose was to eliminate what was described as an incontrovertible nuclear threat posed by Iran's advancing nuclear program. The operation was executed with overwhelming force, targeting fortified and deeply buried facilities. American bombers deployed specialized munitions, including the formidable 30,000-pound massive ordnance penetrators, or bunker busters, designed specifically to destroy hardened underground structures. The primary targets were Iran's most significant nuclear sites, including the facilities at Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. President Trump quickly declared the mission a resounding success. In public statements, he asserted that the strikes had effectively obliterated Iran's nuclear infrastructure. He claimed that the bombing had completely removed Iran's capability to develop a nuclear weapon, framing the action as a decisive move to ensure regional and global security against a rogue nuclear power. However, this official narrative was immediately met with skepticism and scrutiny from international observers. While the Trump administration and Israeli officials insisted that Iran was on the verge of weaponizing its nuclear material, this assessment was not corroborated by independent intelligence. The International Atomic Energy Agency, the United Nations nuclear watchdog, had not reported any evidence that Iran was actively pursuing a nuclear bomb. Similarly, key elements within the United States' own intelligence community had not publicly supported the claim of an imminent threat. This discrepancy raised serious questions about the true motivations behind the attack and whether the justification presented to the public was based on solid evidence or political expediency. The human cost of Operation Midnight Hammer quickly became apparent, further complicating the official story of a clean surgical strike. Reports from Iran detailed significant civilian casualties, a tragic consequence of dropping massive bombs near populated areas. Among the victims was the celebrated 23-year-old poet, Parnia Abbasi, who was killed along with her family in Tehran. These stories of loss put a human face on the conflict, challenging the narrative of a simple counter-proliferation mission. The deaths of innocent civilians fueled international condemnation and highlighted the brutal reality of the attack, moving the conversation beyond strategic objectives to the devastating impact on ordinary Iranian lives. The roots of the 2025 conflict are not found in recent events alone, but are deeply embedded in over 70 years of complex and often painful history between the United States and Iran. For a time, the two nations were close allies. This period began in 1953 when the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency played a pivotal role in a coup that overthrew Iran's democratically elected Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh. He had nationalized Iran's oil industry, challenging Western interests. In his place, the US and Britain reinstalled Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, a monarch who would rule Iran with an iron fist for the next quarter century, always with the staunch backing of Washington. This single event created a deep well of resentment among many Iranians. Under the Shah's rule, Iran became a key pillar of US policy in the Middle East, acting as a bulwark against Soviet influence during the Cold War. The relationship flourished on a state-to-state level, with extensive military and economic cooperation. It was during this era of close partnership that Iran's nuclear program was first established, ironically with the full support and technical assistance of the United States. Washington saw a nuclear-powered Iran under its ally the Shah as a stabilizing force in the region. This historical fact adds a layer of complexity to the later American opposition to the very same program after it fell into different hands, highlighting the shifting alliances and priorities that have defined the relationship. This era of alliance came to a dramatic and violent end with the Iranian Revolution in 1979. Widespread popular discontent with the Shah's oppressive rule, his pro-Western policies, and economic inequality culminated in a massive uprising that forced him to flee the country. The revolution brought Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini to power, establishing the Islamic Republic of Iran, a government founded on principles that were deeply anti-American. This event fundamentally transformed the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. The United States lost its most important ally in the region, and in its place rose a revolutionary government that viewed Washington as the Great Satan, an imperialist power responsible for propping up a hated dictator. The hostility was cemented just months after the revolution, when a group of radical Iranian students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, taking 52 American diplomats and citizens hostage. The ensuing hostage crisis lasted for 444 agonizing days, severing all diplomatic ties between the two nations, and marking the formal beginning of decades of animosity. This event left a lasting scar on the American psyche, and solidified Iran's image in the United States as a hostile and untrustworthy state. Since that crisis, the relationship has been defined by sanctions, proxy conflicts, and a profound lack of direct communication, creating a cycle of mistrust that made diplomatic solutions increasingly difficult to achieve. Following the 1979 revolution, Iran's nuclear program became a central point of contention with the West. The new government inherited the infrastructure started by the Shah, but viewed nuclear capability through a different lens, as a deterrent and a symbol of national sovereignty. Tensions escalated in 2002 when President George W. Bush labeled Iran as part of an axis of evil alongside Iraq and North Korea. This rhetoric, combined with the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003, reinforced Iran's belief that it needed a powerful defense to protect itself from potential American aggression. The international community, led by the U.S., responded with crippling economic sanctions aimed at forcing Iran to abandon its nuclear ambitions. After years of tense negotiations and economic pressure, a diplomatic breakthrough was achieved in 2015. The Obama administration, along with other world powers like the European Union, Russia, and China, successfully negotiated the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, commonly known as the Iran nuclear deal. Under this landmark agreement, Iran agreed to strict limitations on its nuclear program and consented to rigorous international inspections. In return, the crippling sanctions that had devastated its economy were lifted. The deal was hailed as a major victory for diplomacy, a peaceful resolution that prevented both an Iranian bomb and a potential war in the Middle East. However, this diplomatic achievement proved to be short-lived. In 2018, President Donald Trump unilaterally withdrew the United States from the JCPOA, calling it a horrible, one-sided deal. He argued that the agreement did not go far enough in curbing Iran's other activities, such as its ballistic missile program and its support for proxy groups in the region. The Trump administration reimposed and expanded the sanctions, adopting a maximum pressure campaign designed to cripple Iran's economy and force it back to the negotiating table for a new, tougher deal. This move shattered the international consensus and pushed Iran to gradually resume its nuclear activities beyond the limits set by the 2015 accord. The maximum pressure campaign set the stage for the 2025 conflict. With the deal broken and sanctions reimposed, hardliners in both countries gained influence. In the years leading up to the bombing, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, a longtime advocate for military action, repeatedly warned that Iran was on the brink of acquiring a nuclear weapon, a claim often unsupported by intelligence agencies. This rhetoric found a receptive audience in the Trump administration. The final catalyst came in early June 2025, when Israel launched its own unilateral strikes against Iranian military and nuclear sites. Days later, the United States joined the assault, transforming a regional skirmish into a major international crisis. The immediate aftermath of the US-Israeli bombing was a rapid and dangerous escalation. Iran, vowing revenge, did not hesitate to retaliate. It launched 14 missiles at the Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, a major hub for U.S. military operations in the region. While advanced missile defense systems intercepted 13 of the projectiles and the base had been mostly evacuated, the message was clear: American forces were vulnerable. Simultaneously, Iran fired missiles at Israel, resulting in 4 deaths and demonstrating its willingness to engage in direct, multi-front warfare. This swift counterattack brought the entire region to the brink of a full-blown war, with the potential for catastrophic consequences. Just as the conflict seemed poised to spiral out of control, a fragile ceasefire was announced. President Trump, after claiming victory, declared a total ceasefire had been brokered with the assistance of Qatari diplomats and senior members of his administration, including Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. However, this truce was immediately precarious. Israel accused Iran of violating the agreement with further missile launches and vowed to continue its own military campaign, independent of the U.S. ceasefire. This created a chaotic situation where the primary American ally in the attack was not party to the peace, leaving the region on a knife's edge. The bombing and its fallout have left the Middle East in a more dangerous and unpredictable state. With over 40,000 U.S. troops stationed in the region, the risk of further attacks by Iran or its powerful proxy allies like the Houthis in Yemen remains exceptionally high. In a move that threatened the global economy, Iran's parliament voted to support the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway through which a significant portion of the world's oil supply passes. The United States responded by increasing its naval presence, sending another aircraft carrier to the region. This military posturing has created a tense standoff, where any miscalculation could trigger a wider conflict. Ultimately, the 2025 bombing did not resolve the nuclear issue. It may have made it worse. While the physical infrastructure at Fordo and Natanz was severely damaged, Iran's nuclear knowledge and expertise remain intact. In a defiant response, the Iranian parliament voted to suspend cooperation with the IAEA and has threatened to withdraw from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty altogether. This raises the grim possibility that Iran, feeling cornered and vulnerable, will now openly pursue nuclear weapons as its only guarantee of survival, following the path of North Korea. The strikes intended to eliminate a nuclear threat may have only succeeded in making an Iranian bomb a near certainty.